call the meeting to order. Let's take roll call. Start with you, Ricky.
Ricky Dyson,
Cora Warfield.
Ann Ellis.
John Mix,
Brian Lundgren.
Okay. We have a visitor.
We have 3 visitors online. If anyone wants to speak on anything that's not on tonight's agenda, please raise your hand electronically. Helen Denton. Go ahead, Helen.
Good evening. I'm very curious as to the purpose of this rezoning. I am a new resident in Toledo. I purchased the property at 140 Southeast 2nd Street, which is directly across the street from the proposed rezoning. I'm a longtime resident of Oregon coming from Waldport, but I'm new to the whole Toledo management system. So I'm very curious to hear what this proposal is, what it means, what is planned, and how that would impact my property.
Perfect, and thank you, Helen. We'll have, as part of the process for the public hearing for the rezone, I'll provide some context, and then the property owner will provide some context, and there'll be opportunity for public comment as well. So there'll be additional time for you to submit official comments towards the application.
During this hearing, or is that something that I would submit after the fact?
During the hearing.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Should I unmute now?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll call for approval. The October 9th, 2024 minutes.
I would move to approve those. I didn't see anything that needed to be changed.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Say aye.
I abstained, I wasn't here.
Oh, actually, that was neither. I need to abstain too.
Can we pass them? Well, it's still the majority. There were
Yeah.
3 of us that were here, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Did that work, Arlene, if
Yeah.
we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so it looks like now we're moving into the public hearing process on the comprehensive land use plan map and zoning map amendment to rezone property at 161 Southeast 2nd Street from general residential zone to commercial zone, requested by Eric Bone. I'll read the public hearing procedure.
And you can, to save yourself time, you can open the hearing for both and read all this once.
Okay.
And then we'll do the staff report and all the comments each separately, but you can read the statements for rights and relevance and right to appeal all at once. So if you describe the second hearing as well, yeah.
Okay, so we'll also open up the public hearing, the zoning ordinance amendment to modify regulations in the commercial zone, light industrial zone, home occupation uses, and conditional use standards for psilocybin services requested by the city of Toledo. Now, I think the first thing I need to do is call for declaration of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by commissioners for any of tonight's agenda items. Does anybody take a site review or anything?
I looked at it,
I drove by on 2nd Street this morning to take a look at it.
yeah, I've been walked past this, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, read the statement of rights and relevance. Okay, all testimony or evidence presented toward the request being heard must be directed toward the relevant criteria maintained in the Toledo municipal codes, to other city plans or policies, or to other criteria which a person believes pertains to the request. All persons shall raise issues with sufficient clarity so as to allow the planning commission or others an adequate opportunity to respond to or resolve the issue. Failure to address a criterion before the close of the hearing record precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that criterion. Failure by the applicant no later than the close of the hearing record to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issues will preclude an action for damages based on those issues in the circuit court. Prior to the close of the evidentiary record of this hearing, a participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If a participant requests such an opportunity prior to the close of the evidentiary record, then the planning commission will either continue the hearing for at least 7 days or leave the record open for at least 7 days to allow the submission of additional written evidence, arguments, or testimony. An appeal from an action or ruling by the planning commission can be made to the city council within 14 days after the date of the planning commission's decision or ruling by filing a written notice and paying the appeal fee. The date of the planning commission decision is the date the order is signed. If no appeal is taken within the 14-day period, the action or ruling of the planning commission shall be final. If an appeal is filed, the council shall receive a report and recommendation from the appropriate city official and shall hold a public hearing. In order to have standing for an appeal, a person must have mailed written notice or have participated in writing or in person at the planning commission public hearing or have been substantially affected by the action or ruling. This is for all of the public hearing items being presented on the agenda.
And then one clarification, so we have our kind of common green sheet with language, but I just wanted to clarify that the one difference with the two applications that we have today is that planning commission makes a recommendation to the city council. So your decision won't be the final decision, it'll be a recommendation to the city council who will make the final decision, and at that time they would be reading the same appeal notice and but just one clarifying item, and that's on staff, that we need to update this to be more comprehensive for not just certain applications, but all applications, but just to clarify. But everything else in there applies.
Okay, and it looks like now I'll turn that over to you for the staff report.
Perfect, thank you. And so we'll start with the application for the rezone and then the plan amendment. So this application is RZ 1-24 and then EA 1-24. Eric Phone is the applicant who is here today, and will have an opportunity to present as well. So this proposal, often I'll refer to it as the old Eagles building, but there are three tax lots included in the proposal. So tax lots 7,800, 7,900, and 8,200. Actually, there's a map included in the packet, but it's the tax lots are approximately half of the Eagles building, and then the two upper lots, which I'll refer to often as the parking lot area or the upper area of the proposal. The other three tax lots that are owned by the same owner and are the other half of the Eagles building are actually already zoned commercial. So it's the only ones as part of this application to change from residential general to commercial are the three tax lots listed, 7,800, 7,900, and 8,200. And question, Ann?
When I drove by, it was hard to, and I saw where the Eagles building was. The Eagles building takes up 7,100, 7,200, and 7,401. it spans all three of those lots,
The 7100 and 7200.
7,100, okay.
The back, that 7401, it's actually the back parking lot, but I don't
Okay.
think there's actually any building on that portion.
Okay. So the building does span two
The
tax.
building spans two tax
Okay,
lots, so
thank
it's,
you.
71.
the building is currently split zoned.
Yes.
So and that's, the building it's historically been that way of split zone. As many of you know, it was formerly the Eagles building there, and now a new property owner does own the lot. And the proposal is to rezone those upper three lots from the general residential zone to the commercial zone. And just, I guess, I mentioned it, but there's the building portion and then the upper area, which was used as a historically as a parking lot area for the Eagles building, and now currently just sits as a vacant lot at the moment. In terms of development constraints, that upper lot is relatively flat, but there are some slopes up to Alder on the lot and some slopes down from the parking lot down to the building. But the main area of that upper lot is a flat lot. Currently, city water and sewer are connected to the Eagles building. Any future proposal to connect would have to go through Public Works to connect to city water and sewer. We listed the development standards in here, which I'll get to for the commercial zone, and then also listed that the current standards are in the RG residential general zone. We note, as part of the process, we noticed neighbors and posted to the newspaper and posted to the Department of Land Conservation and Development's plan amendment portal. So that's part of the required process for public notices. And again, this would planning commission makes that recommendation to city council for the final decision. So kind of on page 2, going through, I won't read these verbatim, but going through the rezone request and plan amendment criteria and standards. So we've listed here the 2023 Toledo comp plan. Any change must be consistent with Oregon statewide planning goals and guidelines and other applicable criteria. In addition, the applicant must show circumstances have changed, and then there's a public need for the amendment. And the need can't be met by another method. So this is a quasi judicial map amendment. So basically what that means is that the applicant has come in and proposed the map amendment, and since it's a comp plan and a zone change map amendment, that's why the final approval body is city council. The criteria for quasi judicial map amendments, it's listed under number 3 here on page 3. But under, I think importantly, under B, demonstration of compliance with the standards and criteria of the code and evidence of change in the neighborhood or a mistake or inconsistency in the comp plan or land use regarding the property. And then since this is a legislative decision, it has to be approved or denied. So there will be a decision, but in your case, it has to be a recommendation for approval or recommendation for denying the application. Under 5, this lists the current uses in the commercial zone, the uses permitted, and then also what would be a conditional use potentially in the commercial zone. And for reference, we also listed on page 4 the residential general zone uses allowed and the conditional uses currently. So in the residential general zone, right now, you could see an apartment complex, for example, as a permitted use, but then the commercial zone, you might see maybe an office use, and I'll let the applicant speak to potentially more details of what they're proposing moving forward. We list kind of the purpose of the commercial and residential zone. And then the kind of purpose of the zoning designations. I won't read that specifically. But that it's there for reference. But what I want to focus on are kind of, I guess, number 9, amendments to the comprehensive plan map may be filed with the city or appropriate forms filed by the city to the city. So that's what we had an application to change. So in this case, it's a specific property that's happening in the change, and that's why it's a quasi judicial map amendment. The we've listed in the comp plan different goals and articles, listed citizen involvement, and then economic development, improve the economic position of all elements of Toledo's economic base by retaining and expanding the current businesses while recruiting new businesses. And then housing, ensure that the city has an adequate supply of residentially zoned land, and I'll get into that in more detail in the findings. And then we list public works, transportation, and urbanization and livability as well. And then we've listed, I think one note is there's some overlap here, but I listed the Oregon statewide planning goals and guidelines. And there's overlap because our comp plan has similar structure as the Oregon statewide planning goals. So you'll see that the overlap there in terms of the housing and economic goals. And I will note for the record that Planning Commissioner Dennis Sutherland arrived.
Started at 6:30.
We
Went back now?
This was the first meeting that we went back to 6. I think, right?
Yes, yeah, but it's right here.
Okay.
no, sorry about that.
If it helps, city council thought it was at 6:32.
Okay.
This meeting,
You're here on time. I was dragging my feet, waiting outside even.
Yeah. No worries.
Okay,
We're currently going through the first application right now.
sorry about that.
And then I'll go to page 9 on the proposed facts and findings. So this I've covered number 1 already, and number 2 I think a pretty good detail. And then this your 170860 grants authority for the decision to deny, approve, or approve with conditions necessary to bring the amendment in compliance with the applicable criteria. But again, Planning Commission is making that recommendation of one of those based on the findings in the record. So number 4, I want to get into especially criteria B and C, but criteria A is basically satisfied. This is a rezone and comp plan. So ultimately, after this change, the comp plan and rezone will match. The zoning and comp plan will match. Criteria B is satisfied because it will be complied with as the applicant has requested a change in the 2023 land use map and has proposed a change to the designation. The designation of the property by the comprehensive plan is medium density and will be changed to commercial, and the zoning will be changed matching that. And then I'll kind of get into specifics of specific land use designation compliance later on in the findings. The criteria C is satisfied as the zone map and comp plan designation was never consistent with the actual use of the property. The property has historically been the Eagles building, which was commercial in nature and did not contain a residential housing unit. Therefore, this was an inconsistency in the comp plan and land use maps regarding the property. So that, as you can see with the lower tax lots that are actually already commercial that I discussed with the Eagles building, it was split zone. So the goal here is that the applicant is trying to bring all of the property under the same designation of commercial. And there are some findings too. So the Eagles building was built in 1954, which was actually prior to our zoning. So staff would argue that there was an inconsistency in the map when it was adopted, that it should have been adopted as commercial because it was Eagles building, which was used as a commercial use since 1954. And I'm jumping a little bit to the findings, supplemental findings, but just as a kind of additional comment is that the current Eagles building is considered illegal non-conforming, and the applicant is currently in the process of renovating that building. And that legal non-conforming would be similar in nature to the Eagles building as a bar restaurant area. So that's in process, but that was a determination that's already been made. One note on number 5, I do want to note that we say the city council meeting is on December 6th. It is on December 4th, which is the Wednesday. It's correct on the front of the document, but incorrect under bullet number 5 on page 10. There's some findings about the adjacent property. So this the restaurant to the west is currently zoned commercial. Across the street, you have residential zoning, and to the east and south, you have residential zoning. And actually, the lot to the south is actually we're looking at it today, and it's actually split zoned residential, and the back half of it is commercial. So it's kind of it's already a mixed use neighborhood, and we're not the proposal is not creating spot zoning because it is adjacent to existing commercial zoning and adjacent to the Main Street core. The tax lots combined are 0.6 acres in size. The upper parking lot area is roughly 0.4 acres in size. Covered this. So we included some of the applicant's narrative in terms of the purpose. Under number 9, the purpose is to make consistent the commercial zoning for the 4 lots containing the formal Eagles Lodge and lower parking lot area. The proposal is minor in nature because the historic use of the property has been commercial. So again, the historic use of it, the goal is to match that historic use. The proposal meets Article 2 land use planning of the comprehensive plan and meets Goal 2 of land use planning. Number 10 here, I won't read all of this, but in summary, the city recently had a housing capacity analysis completed that looked at whether or not there was adequate supply of residential land. It determined the growth rate of Toledo is expected to be relatively slow, but based on the analysis from that, there was a determination that there was adequate supply of land, that this was completed in 2022. And since then, we've only had about 9 permits for dwelling units in that time. And there's been 2 demolition permits where someone demos the house and rebuilds in the same lot. So there hasn't been substantial growth in the last 2 years that would make these findings irrelevant, for this application. But staff would still, based on this, finds that with this change, there would still be adequate supply of residential land in the city. The property will be zoned commercial, as I mentioned, and then we listed those development standards for the commercial zone in the staff report, and it would be opening up more economic opportunity for the city for adding the commercial zone area. And again, it is a small acreage lot of 0.6 acres, and 0.4 of it's vacant, 0.2 of it roughly includes the old Eagles actual structure. I mentioned the city and water connection. There's a little bit of findings about the existing road access to Southeast 2nd Street. And then off of Southeast Butler Bridge Road, the back part of the Eagles building is accessed from Butler Bridge Road. We didn't independently verify the access easement across the neighboring property, but that there is a back parking lot to the Eagles Lodge.
You have to go through cobblestone to do that?
Yeah, it does cross cobblestone lot. We didn't independently verify that access easement.
And
But then Second Street, the upper or the vacant parking lot area has an access point off of Second Street right now. There's no access off of Alder, and I don't think there would be because of the slopes in the future. So Southeast Second and Alder are identified as local roads in the TSP. This is a proposed change from medium density to commercial, and I'll actually read a little bit of the findings, the supplemental findings which staff worked on, and these were passed out and they're also available on the website, and also the comment that we received from a neighboring property is also available on the website currently for those of you online. But there was testimony provided about the potential transportation impacts because of the zone change. The testimony discusses the transportation planning rule. The lower Eagles building, as discussed above, is expected to maintain a similar use to the historic use. So the traffic count for the lower lot will remain unchanged from that historic Eagles use. The upper lots are 0.4 acres in size. They were used as a parking lot for the Eagles building historically. Under the current zoning, the upper lots could be developed as apartments, for example. So the current RG zoning, a reasonable development proposal, considering parking would be 8 to 10 units, or approximately 70 trips. And sorry, I'm on the back page of the supplemental findings, connecting it to finding 14 on page 12 of the staff report. A reasonable, and then the testimony received references the transportation planning rule and refers to the Oregon Highway Plan, which states that if there's a small increase in daily traffic, less than 400 trips between the existing plan and proposed amendment, it can be determined that the proposed zone will cause no further degradation to the surrounding road network. So the proposal, the upper commercial lot right now we don't have a specific development proposal for the upper lot. The Eagles building, as we mentioned, is proposed to stay same as the historic use as a restaurant bar, and it's currently in the process of in the renovation process. It would be reasonable to assume the 0.4 acre commercial development would not produce 470 trips. So the 400 plus the 70, which potentially could be developed under the current proposal. For example, a 4,000 square foot clinic would produce 128 trips, which is only 58 more than the apartment complex example. We're getting this information from our infrastructure, the Toledo public infrastructure methodology, the system development charge methodology. So that's where we're getting the numbers from. But we're trying to we don't have a specific development proposal on the commercial lot, but trying to estimate what a potential development could occur in that commercial area. It's a small lot. And then one thing that will limit development on that upper commercial lot is no matter what use goes there, there'll be parking requirements, which will limit the size of the building potentially, or whatever is proposed, because there will be need for parking area on that lot. And this supplemental finding was in part to address the comments that were received in the record from the neighboring property owner, and who had hired Udell Engineering and Land Surveying. Laura is the name on the supplemental comments that were received. Um, again, just noting future development would be subject to standards, so if it was our geotech standards, our public work standards, so sidewalks, and any other development standards such as landscaping as well. So under, I'm still on page 12 and number 15. So we don't have a specific development proposal, but when the development proposal went in, there would be landscaping, parking, different requirements for that proposal. And that's a summary of the application, and then those comments are included in the record, and then the supplemental findings as well. And then we can open it up to the applicant too, who may be able to answer kind of some of the questions you might have. And I think that's the good place to go. I can answer clarifying questions, but otherwise I think it's good to move to the applicant testimony.
Okay. Okay, we can move to the applicant testimony, and if the applicant could state their name and address for the record before they start to present their testimony.
And my name is Eric Bone, and my address is 5721 Northeast Sumner Street in Portland, Oregon. 97218.
Okay,
Would you like me to continue?
yes, you can go ahead and give testimony.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your time. Before I get started, I think the first thing that I should say is to kind of lay out the intention of the use of that lot, is to develop some cluster housing. And so it is a residential goal. However, the type of housing that we are trying to create there requires a commercial zoning. And so that's what sort of set us out on this journey. Our goal is to design a project that will add to Toledo's charm and artistic identity, and come from an artistic background. So just so you know that that's sort of our direction of where we want to take that lot up there. Especially I'm speaking specifically of the two lots, 7,900 and 8,200, which comprise the parking area. 7,800, the adjoining lot, is half of the building, as was mentioned before. The building down below, the Eagles building, is half on 7,800 and half on the combined lots of 7,401, 7,200, and 7,100. And so, there's obviously some confusion about why that would have been that way. But that's the way it is. So in terms of what our intentions, specifically in rezoning, is to move towards creating some cluster housing on 7,900 and 8,200. So if anybody has any questions along the way, I responded. I received the package today, and with the comments from the Laura, and I believe it's the company is called Pacific Inland Holdings, and I believe the gentleman's name is Rick Prest, who is the owner of the adjacent property to the south. So in terms of rezoning it as a commercial lot, or two commercial lots from residential, I think that's what they are speaking to. Even though our intention is not to create a commercial sort of to build a commercial building or to do something commercially there. Rezoning it obviously does open up the possibility for that sometime in the future. And so I can speak to their comments, which might kind of answer some of your questions about which might be other people's comments as well. So I'll just go through it really quickly, and I went through the comments. I assume you have them in front of you. And starting with the the comments about the setbacks. The initial thing that they were talking about was the concern that commercial property would not be required to have any setbacks or any restrictions for height. I don't think that's an issue because of the slope of those lots. You really couldn't build to the property line even if you wanted to, because of the sloping of it, and it's not really logistical to build a building maximizing the entire square footage of that. And like Justin laid out, there would be parking requirements and other things that would limit the size and scope of anything that built there anyway. So that's, I believe, a moot point. Let's see, with that, the second note was having to do with the making it a consistent zoning, saying that there's actually 6 lots, and I think it just basically speaks to the confusion of the various lots that pre-existing the zoning plan. And so I do believe it falls into the category of some sort of mistake or inconsistency with zoning. I think that's pretty obvious. Um, the and I explained also how the Eagles building itself was or is located on both a commercial and residential zoning on one building. So it really doesn't make any sense. The third thing that I was responding to is the amount of residential inventory, so to speak, versus commercial inventory. And Justin just spoke to that. There seems to be plenty of residential land available. And so I'm glad he mentioned that. And so it also said that on the last part of the comment said that there was the anticipated future use is not identified in the staff report and on the applicant's submittal, and that's correct. I didn't say specifically what our goal was for that commercial lot. And Helen, if you're still listening, this might, this is probably what you're curious about, and what a lot of people would be curious about is what we're planning on that lot. And as I laid it out in the beginning, our goal is to create a small cluster housing development there. So I'll open it up to questions, and yeah, thanks for your time.
I have a question. Are you aware that the wall that for the 8,200 and 7,900 lots, I guess it would be 79 up against 78. The wooden wall and the I-beams there, they're dead man's buried into the lot of 8,200 and 79. There's dead man's buried underneath that asphalt.
Right. You're talking about the soldier pilings that
Yeah.
create that retaining wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely aware of their existence. And that's kind of why we are, it's not really reasonable for us to, to build something very big up there, or because the bigger you go, the more structural and geotechnical issues you will have on that particular lot. And so our development is that's why we're going with something that's lightweight, for lack of a better term, a smaller development that is more of a cluster housing. And I can go into more detail about it, but for the purpose of the zoning change, yeah, we're aware of that and the geotechnical issues.
Yeah, half of that is all filled.
Right.
And then the dead mans were put in, and there's I believe we used 1-inch cable that went from the dead mans to them H-beams. Them steel H-beams that were driven in the ground with excavator, and put them wood beams in between the H-braces, the H-beams. So I don't know how much the upper lot would be usable without like putting in pilings or something, or I don't know how much money a guy wanna spend on something like that, but it's your money, so.
Right.
I didn't know if you knew all that stuff, or it was all permitted back in the nineties, late nineties, I believe.
Well,
So
that's definitely something I'd want to learn more about. I mean, I have
I was there when all that was done, and I'm pretty familiar with the whole layout on it.
well, it sounds like you'd be a valuable resource when we're starting to do some.
I know quite a bit about it. I was standing there watching it when I was a member of that lodge in many years, so.
Mhm.
I actually was there when we purchased that upper lot, so. But,
Okay.
yeah, I didn't know if you was aware of that going on.
Yeah, yeah, it's I mean, I've owned the property for maybe 2 years in February, so
Right.
I've become intimately familiar with a lot of the intricacies of that building and that lot in general. So yeah, I mean, our development there, I think, is reasonable for what's possible there without having a huge geotechnical impact. That's definitely part of the strategy there.
When, there'll be, for the additional questions, well, there'll be more time for questions at the end too, so you can move to kind of the
Okay.
opponent and.
Okay, does that complete your testimony?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that sounds good. Is there any proponent testimony that on anybody that's here on your behalf?
No, it's just me.
Okay. Is there any opponent testimony? Anybody opposing this that would like to say something? I see Helen has a hand raised there.
And there's also other interested parties in general, but.
And then, or other interested parties, maybe, I guess, yeah, I can say other interested parties.
Go ahead, Helen.
Hello. Thank you for being patient with me and taking my questions. My first question is, Eric, could you please help me understand what cluster housing is?
Um, I think it's just sort of a umbrella term in housing development where you have small, and Justin, you might be able to come up with a clearer definition, but it's a small cluster of small buildings. Our proposal is 5 to 6 units at the most, with one sort of small utility buildings. These would range from, probably around under 100 square feet in general. These are like you would consider them to be like tiny houses or little cottages, things that things like that.
And the housing would be for whom?
It would be for people who, homeowners. There's a precedent for this. I have a friend who created a development in Waldport, and he has upward of about 80 tiny houses on
You're talking
his.
about Tiny Trank? Josh Palmer?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know it well.
Okay. Well, it's he's a friend of mine, and I uh was very involved in the tiny house kind of early in the process when tiny houses were first started arriving. And I had built a few of them and had you know, been involved in Portland tiny houses for years. And I think my wife and I are doing this ourselves. We're not part of a big development company or anything like that. This is kind of our goal. We're moving to the area. We're moving to South Beach, and so this is, we're not developing it from afar necessarily. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit as to what we're thinking.
It does a lot. What happens to the Eagles building?
The Eagles building is staying there. That has working with a tenant that is, kind of in the process of building a brand there and opening it up for events and as an event space, just pretty much in the same capacity that it was used as the Eagles Lodge. But I myself is not, I'm not going to be a part of the day-to-day management of it. I'm just the property, kind of more taking care of the property.
Yeah, are
But
there gonna be any improvements to that building? I mean,
yes,
from
yes.
the outside?
Yeah, we got a grant from the city of Toledo to do an ADA entrance in the front, and it's going to be painted. We're going to be working on, our goal is to, to upgrade the building and kind of restore it as much as possible.
Well, I gotta say, as your across the street neighbor, I'm delighted to have attended this. Um, and I'm wholeheartedly in favor, um, planning commission, of something like a mini tiny tranquility across the street from me, because it's a wonderful community. And if you haven't had the opportunity to go see it, I highly recommend that you do. It's in Wildport off of Azalea, just south of the city to the east of 101 or to the west of 101. And Josh Palmer is um, a fabulous resource for you all to tap into as to how it should be done properly. Eric, I'd love to meet you in person. And please tell Josh that I said hello.
Okay, I will. Helen, thank you. It's nice to meet you. And my wife's name is Kimmy, and we'll be around. And feel free to stop by anytime. And incidentally, the person who is working in the building on her brand in there, her name is Jen, and she's kind of getting her thing started, and we'll be hosting events. I believe she has an event in there this coming weekend on the 16th. I think there's some music there, so go and check it out.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. I'm curious about this next thing on the agenda. I don't,
Yeah, yeah, we'll get there. But we have to go agenda topic by agenda topic.
no worries. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Yeah, thank you though.
Okay, so I think that must, is there anybody else out there that looks like they
Pause for a
possibly want to say?
second. Any other comments?
Okay, no other comments, then that brings us to the questions by the commission.
Or if there's any, I don't think there would be any additional rebuttal, but if you have any final comments, Eric.
Nope. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, does any of the commissioners have any questions regarding this? That they have for Eric? Does not appear to be. Okay. So I guess at that, we close the public hearing. Oh, sorry.
Nobody asked if the audience.
I know, sorry.
So, my name is Tracy Mix. I live at 443 Southeast 7th Street. I am here in capacity as a citizen of Toledo, not in any other capacity. In that one right there. I think the tiny home village is great. I'm excited to see some more of that happening in the area, especially with the housing shortage we've got. So, this is exciting. It's just really all I have to say about it.
Great.
That's good. Okay, so then at that, we will close the public hearing. And now, Justin, under these deliberations, do you want me to read that part too?
No. Sure, yeah, sure, go ahead and read it.
Should I do that?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
read it.
Okay. The commissioners will consider the facts presented at the hearing. And if additional time is required, set a public meeting date to announce their findings and decision. During the deliberations, the commission may ask the proponent, opponent, or staff for clarification or for new information. No input from the audience will be accepted unless solicited by the commission. And the commission will make a decision based on findings of fact.
Yeah, so this is time now for planning commission members to deliberate and comment on the proposal.
There's no the page 12 is where that.
Yeah, it's open.
Yeah, I know, everybody has that.
Well, I think a lot of things were clarified and driving past it, you know, it's like, okay, what starts and what finishes? So I think they did a good job. The fact that it's already split, so, I mean, you got light industrial, so I think they did a good job presenting it, so, yeah. It will be good. It's good to know that all that stuff underneath, because the only other thing would be whether or not, if they're aware of the geotechnical problems. That's what's important.
Well, I'd just like to see that.
No, what's
That's
good.
why it's important to have boots on the ground and that.
Yeah, no, I'm pleased with the fact that he seems to be,
Yeah, that's
aware,
what's
yeah.
important to look at.
and once you're in, yeah,
Because,
yeah, it makes a difference.
got to put utilities
Yeah.
and under there, so, but, anyways, yeah, other than that, it's gonna be sliding down the hill on top of the building. I know over half the parking lot there is filled in. Dick Woods filled it all in, Dick Woods from the members, he did it all. So, that's all.
May I say something? May I ask a question?
It's up to you,
Yeah.
Cora.
It's up to me.
Yeah, if you want.
No, that's fine, if you'd like to say something.
I was just curious if you know when that was filled in. Maybe that's a conversation for a different time, probably.
I think in the late nineties.
Actually, I think it was earlier than that, Dennis.
That would be
I lived
my
across the
guess.
street and it was already filled.
Yeah.
And I moved out of there in 96.
Was it, and it was already done? So then it would have been, yeah, then it would have had to been in the mid-90s then, a little sooner then.
Okay.
But, yeah, maybe earlier 90s.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It should be at the planning commission. They should have the permit. But good luck there. They hold the community hostage, so.
Okay, so you guys,
So my opinion is that it's, that I did.
okay?
Most part,
I agree. I like that whole idea.
Tiny homes, you know, 100 square feet has been needed there for a long time.
Did you get the impression, I didn't get the impression they were gonna, but maybe they are tiny homes. I thought we had where
Well,
they
like,
had to be
It's
on
like,
a,
be like a park,
well, they'll
somewhere,
cross,
you know,
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, that structure, but.
yeah. That's part of what they'll do later, yeah.
Okay, so who wants to,
Based on the staff report and attachments, testimony and evidence presented to the planning commission at the public hearing on November 13th, 2024, the Toledo Planning Commission recommends approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and rezone request as meeting the applicable criteria, including the 2023 Toledo Comprehensive Land Use Plan, Toledo Municipal Code Section 17.80.050, and the statewide planning goals, and the commission adopts the proposed facts and findings presented to the staff report, allowing for the correction of topographical and grammatical errors.
I'll second that. Oh, you did.
Brian did, yeah. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes
Good luck.
unanimously.
Oh, great. Thank you. And with that, I'll say good night.
Yeah, and Eric, so the recommendation goes to city council and the meeting will be December 4th. And we can make sure you have that for your record, and they will make the final decision.
Watch them other one.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next public hearing. Public hearing number, file number ZOA-1-24. And we have the public hearing procedure. So I can turn this over to Justin for the staff report.
Thank you. I'll keep this description as short as I can. But this is an application ZOA-1-24. So again, this is a legislative amendment to the code where planning commission will make the recommendation to city council to change the Toledo municipal code. So there's this specifically is amending our commercial zone standards, light industrial zone standards, definitions, home occupations, and then there's specific conditional use criteria that will be adopted as part of it. So those are the listed sections there of the municipal code that are being changed. That we're adopting a definition for psilocybin product, which I'll go over, psilocybin product manufacturer, psilocybin service center, and psilocybin services. So this ultimately, what it would do is adopt in the commercial. Actually, I'll come back to that. Actually, I'll get into the details in a second. But this we noticed the public hearing to the neighbors, and actually this is required to measure what's called the Measure 56 notice. So any property owner that owns light industrial or commercial zone property received the notice notifying them that there would be a change to the light industrial or commercial zone. That's a requirement in state law to notice if there could be impacts to property values based on the change. So we're required to send out that notice. It was posted in the newspaper. We received 2 property owner calls to discuss the ordinance, but we never received any written comments that were submitted into the record. But I do believe, and there'll be time for additional testimony for those in the audience as well to provide comments today. So on page 2, I'm gonna just go over a little bit of kind of history of why we're going through the current update of the code. So in November of 2020, there was an Oregon ballot measure 109. This was the Oregon Psilocybin Services Act, and it was passed by Oregon voters, allowing the manufacture, delivery, administration of psilocybin supervised licensed facilities beginning in January 2nd, 2023. Following that, there was an opt-out process that cities could go through. So there was a ballot measure that Toledo residents voted on, and it was passed in the city of Toledo. And that opted out the city until December 31st, 2024. So that deadline is now coming up quickly. So the city did not move forward with putting a new ballot measure forward to extend that opt-out deadline. So the city now, we don't currently have a specific application for this, but we would need to adopt what are called time, place, and manner restrictions. So basically where potentially if someone was to come in, where they potentially could operate a facility in the city. And then there's also Oregon Health Authority specific standards too, which I personally don't know that all of Oregon Health Authority standards. I don't know all the inner workings and details. What we're doing is establishing the zoning, which would be commercial and light industrial, and I'll get into the specifics of what would be allowed at each potentially. And then there's specific standards as well in terms of where they could be located in terms of like distances from schools that I'll go over as well. So there's definitions, so psilocybin product. So this means psilocybin producing fungi and mixtures or substances containing a detectable amount of psilocybin as licensed by Oregon Health Authority. So that's the product definition. And then the manufacturer means a person that manufactures psilocybin products and is licensed by the Oregon Health Authority. So that's actually the manufacturer of the psilocybin products. And then there's psilocybin service center. So this would be the establishment licensed by the Oregon Health Authority, which psilocybin administration sessions are held and at which other psilocybin services may be provided. So these are the service actual facilities. And then it defines what services are: preparation, administration, facilitation of integration or consumption sessions, psilocybin products. So that's background and definitions that would be added to the code, and those were copied directly from the state definition, so those were mirrors of the state's definition. So as you'll see in the 17-16-30 conditional uses permitted in the commercial zone, psilocybin service centers. So only in this case, the service center, not whereas in the light industrial zone, it'd be psilocybin service centers or manufacturers. So that's kind of the difference between the two. The commercial is the service center, and then light industrial, the center or the manufacturer. And I will note, so these are conditional use applications. These are listed as conditional uses, not outright permitted uses. So these are applications that if after this is adopted, someone came in and wanted to provide a service center or a manufacturer, they'd have to find the right zoning and then go through the conditional use product process, which comes back to planning commission for a review. Do you have a question?
Yeah, on prohibited home occupation uses,
Yes.
we have F as the service center and the psilocybin product manufacturer. I interpreted that to mean that that would be something that would be prohibited, but not prohibited in the light industrial. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the home occupation standards, those are that'll apply to your RG and RS zones, so your residential zones in the city. So basically what this is prohibiting is that you don't have psilocybin service centers or manufacturers within residential areas. They have to be within commercial or the light
But they
industrial.
would still be conditional use in the light industrial.
Yeah, both in the commercial and light industrial, and they would be conditional uses that would have to come back, but no. Going back to your question on the home occupations, it's a prohibited use, so any RSRG, someone could come in and do a home occupation. And this is very similar actually to right above, you see that we adopted a similar language for marijuana uses, or producers, processors, retailers, etc. So it's very similar that those not be allowed in residential zones. It's more, home occupations are more so for if I had an office in my home, and typically very limited traffic associated with those, but that it's prohibited for psilocybin service centers. And then the conditional use standards, there's the 176450 there, those are the current standards for conditional uses, but then they're under subsection B5, there would be specific psilocybin service center locational requirements and standards for conditional uses. So one thing that's not only are they not allowed as home occupations, but the use shall not abut an RS or RG zone or Lincoln County residential zone. So if you had a commercial property, but you're abutting a residential property, you would automatically, that property is not eligible. And these standards are very similar to actually what was adopted when the city had to adopt the marijuana standards as well. So it's very, very similar language. Under B, the psilocybin service center may be carried on in conjunction with a product manufacturer in the light industrial zone. So it's just clarifying that you could have a manufacturer and service center in the light industrial zone adjacent to each other, part of the same building. And then one caveat that I want to make clear is that we're just adopting the land use standards, but then this is regulated by the state in terms of it, very similar to marijuana where OLCC regulates. So there's the state regulation, but we're just establishing where potentially they could be in the city. And then there's very clear language about not being adjacent to a school, or not adjacent, sorry, not within 1,000 feet of a school. Size limitation on the facility. And then not be located within 1,000 feet of another facility, so there'd have to be distances between the two facilities.
So is that a state requirement or?
The 1,000 feet between, I'm honestly not sure. We actually tried to get comments from DLCD staff, Department of Land Conservation and Development. I mean, we posted and kept asking, and they didn't provide specific comments. The city's able to adopt these time, place, and manner standards. Our strategy as staff was to do something similar to marijuana facilities, so it's very similar language.
Oh, so that does bring up a thing. I don't know if it's now's the time to talk about it or.
Let's do it in questions. I think will be better, yeah. But I'll note that we'll come back to that specifically. Drive-through facilities are prohibited, and then everything has to basically be located within the building. And then it, very clearly what I stated in terms of compliance with Oregon Health Authority and other federal law and state local standards as well. So that's the language that would be adopted. The kind of under item 3 here, it talks about the legislative amendment process a little bit, which I've kind of covered. On that it goes to planning commission and then city council for final approval. So I won't get into the weeds of page 6. That's all on just process. There's 4 criteria for legislative amendments. Criteria 1 is not applicable because we're not proposing a change to the comprehensive plan. Item 2 is state and federal agency comments. We did not receive any comments from state and federal agencies. We did notice the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and to date have not received any comments. Under criteria 3, we noticed our partners with Lincoln County, no comments were received from the county. And then criteria 4 gets into compliance with land use planning goals, and the findings kind of specifically go through each article. So land use planning, so it's not will not conflict with Oregon's state land use planning program, and will implement the locally desired land use policy. And then specifically the proposed amendments in this case are to be in compliance with the ballot measure 109. In terms of, we kind of go through the different goals here, and I think specifically on page 9, I want to note that we list the commercial and light industrial zones. Those were chosen because of their kind of the nature of different services that could be provided in those zones. So the manufacturer only being in the light industrial zone because that's a more intense use. So that's why it's only potentially allowed as a conditional use in the light industrial zone, whereas only the service center is allowed in the commercial zone. And I guess under economic development, I mean, goal 1 talks about improving economic position of all elements of Toledo's economic base. So it allows the potential for another type of business in the city. Public facilities, we didn't receive any comments specifically from police, fire, or public works in this case. It's not expected to negatively impact the water or wastewater facilities. Transportation, it'll be evaluated on a site-by-site basis because of the conditional use to look at potential traffic. I think I don't want to go through each of those findings, but this is kind of going through how it complies with the comprehensive plan. Again, the main reason we have to go through this is to adopt those time, place, and manner standards to be in compliance with the ballot measure. And if we didn't have any sort of standards adopted, it would kind of be more or less, it would be difficult to regulate, I guess is the answer, because we wouldn't have standards established of where they could potentially be located. It's staff hasn't received any phone calls about potential manufacturers or service centers at this point. But as of January 1, when we get to that date, the Toledo opt-out ends on the 31st. So January 1, I mean, that's a holiday, so January 2nd, you could in theory get an application, but we haven't heard of anyone that wants to apply. That's the staff report, and if there's a clarifying question, I think it's a good time to take that.
So. Where it's 1,000 feet from another psilocybin service center. Or manufacturer, right? So I know that's similar with the marijuana. Thing, but as small as Toledo is. I mean, for me, it's like free enterprise, right? So like, you don't tell a gas station when you can't have another gas station within 1,000 feet. Or a convenience store, or anything else like that, so you're limiting the competition, so it's just gonna be one place that I can charge whatever, just kind of like the marijuana dispensary. So my opinion is that should be removed, because we're really limited on commercial space and light industrial space, but I would recommend changing the marijuana part of it, the marijuana, where it's 1,000 feet from. That's my
the
opinion.
marijuana
Yeah.
dispensary.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying for specifically the marijuana standards?
Both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's.
Yeah, what staff can do, because when we get to that point, planning commission's recommendation could be to move forward and then have staff review if the 1,000 square feet standard is required by state law. And then in that recommendation, if the planning commissioners all agreed that the recommendation could be that is removed if it's not required by state law or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But we can get to that in the deliberation portion too.
Okay, so you were the applicant testimony
Yes, and we.
and the staff report.
Yeah, we don't have, if the city manager or Mike, the attorney, was here, they could provide additional comments, but they're not here, sorry.
Okay. Any other proponent testimony?
We do not see anyone online anymore.
Oh, no one's online.
Last
Oh, well, we can do what we want, huh?
Helen.
Don't know if we could.
No, so there'd be no opponent testimony. Any other interested parties that would like to say anything? Anybody in the audience?
We're going to talk about the 1,000-foot rule later.
Yeah, there'll be deliberations.
Okay, so there's no rebuttal by the applicant, needs to happen. Are there any questions by any of the commission for the applicant that they might have, other than the 1,000-foot?
My understanding is that we're doing this because ORS requires it and because we didn't opt out again. Now, it's just a basic question. Is that opt out off the table as far as the state of Oregon is concerned? People if somebody, Beaverton 3 years from now wanted to have an election and opt out.
No, that's there were multiple cities in the recent election that did have the renewal to opt out again. But
The opt out is always a time limit. In other words, you can only opt out for so long and then you have to revisit it again.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's like a finite, I couldn't tell you if there's like an end to where you can't opt out any longer, but I can say that there were some cities that did decide to put it back to the.
No, it's just, I was curious about the opt out.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the commission? Okay, then looks like we closed the public hearing. And you want me to read the deliberations thing again?
You're good.
Am I okay to not do that? Okay, so planning commission is in deliberations right now. So, and you guys all know if you want to move forward with this, the proposed motion is on page 13. So what, everybody in agreement to move forward?
Okay, does that mean we stop deliberating?
We
We can
can
deliberate.
deliberate for as long as you want. Yeah.
No, I was thinking about the 1,000-foot rule. Why do you feel the way you do?
Well, I mean, like I said, it just limits the competition and you end up with one place and they can charge what they want. And so, you know, like the dispensary here, they're a little more expensive than Newport. And so we could have another dispensary in town, but we can't because there's not enough.
Enough
Not
space.
enough room, yeah. You're abutting the general residential. Or you're within 1,000 feet.
Well, one comment I'd make about that is I've lived overseas in places where there is no rule. There is no law. But there's no rule about anything being close to anything else. And what happens is that it just turns into a nightmare. Because people see, if you're doing well in a particular product, like marijuana, and somebody says there's no rule to stop me starting on a place 3 blocks down the road. Right? Or even next door. And that gets nasty real quick.
Yeah. Well, the limiting factor would be the customers, you know. The customers, how much do they sell, you know?
Right.
My understanding of this is that it isn't dispensed for someone to take home and have at home. You know, it isn't, it's a different, I might be totally wrong, but it's a different use. It's not a recreational drug. It's a
Right.
therapeutic drug. That's my understanding.
Is that so? It sounds like to me you can just go in and buy some.
If that's what you're getting from this, that people can buy the psilocybin, and my understanding is that it's to be given under a controlled,
Yeah.
yeah.
This isn't, it doesn't have anything about, we have it's actually just zoning for.
Yeah, and whether or not it's the health zoning, yeah.
In the service, I would, if you want to reread maybe the service center definition out, so sorry, psilocybin service center definition out loud.
Yeah. So what we have people that will manufacture the aspirin. And then we have people that will dispense the aspirin. But they can only dispense the aspirin within a controlled environment. And the Oregon Health Authority, it's interesting there, but that isn't nothing to do with us. We're having to do this. My understanding is because of all this regulations.
Because you've got to have it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm saying is, you know, you have the right to have a business.
Free enterprise in
Yeah,
the United
that's
States.
the word I'm looking for.
Supposed to have free enterprise in the United
Yeah.
States. You can have 2 coffee shops inside, but you can't have 2 weed shops inside. It's all dictated.
Donors.
Yeah, so.
That's just, I mean, you can have 2 bars right next to each other.
Yeah,
too, so
yeah.
What's the difference if it's 2 bars or, you know, people are seeing purple elephants?
Yeah.
For doing what?
Seeing purple elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's free enterprise in the United States.
Well, behind, once they get
Really?
behind the
Like
wheel
liquor
of the car,
stores.
it's my
Same
business.
thing.
That's
Well,
all I can say,
That's
no matter
still-
what they're on.
That's the thing, and it shouldn't be. 'cause they-
Yeah. So this,
Like going to
Yeah.
the dentist or whatever, getting laughing gas and not letting you drive.
Inside of that.
Yeah. getting your eyes dilated at the doctor and then you drive home. So,
But you're gonna, what you're gonna do, Justin, is you're gonna look and see if that 1,000 feet is a state regulation.
Yeah, if you want to recommend, so we can add to that motion. And then, maybe with adding some language, like with the recommendation that staff review the 1,000 foot distance between facilities standard to see if it's required by state law, and then ultimately, I mean, you could also recommend that if it is not required, that it gets removed or lessened, but then city council would look at that recommendation and make their determination if they wanted that in there or not. If it's state law, we can't remove it. If it's not state law, it could.
Comments from the audience?
Yes, I'd love to comment. I just Googled. I Googled the statute 475A.305. That's the Oregon revised statute that dictates, this isn't the OLCC guidelines, as far as I know, this is just the Oregon statute. That is the one that dictates 1,000 feet from schools, but there is nothing in there that says anything about 1,000 feet from another
business,
business.
and just schools,
And schools, yeah.
and not residential or anything, just.
Yeah, I'm not
schools.
seeing in there now, Justin's gonna wanna go over it and comment to make sure they didn't stick it in some other spot. But at first glance, it does not appear that that's part of the Oregon law,
Okay, great.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, competition makes prices go down.
Yeah, but we don't wanna.
Other than that, they hold you hostage, GC Market.
I know. It'd be nice to.
Only $8 a gallon of milk.
Well, it's just like they have one of these places in Portland or whatever, but it's like $5,000.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
these you mean the psilocybin?
Yeah,
So
it's
I,
like $5,000 or something they get it,
well,
just for your first appointment,
yeah,
so. I'm not saying I'm not, something like that.
yeah, I'm, except I know it's therapeutic, that's all, supposedly.
If, I presume this is covered under DUI. Taking that stuff in your driving.
Yeah, I think anything like that is, cause
It's
you're
a
gonna
lot
have.
wilder than booze.
So I think that, I mean, I'm in agreement if it's not state required. Once we find out that we don't have to have 1,000 feet in
I'm
there.
all for not creating new laws.
I'm fine with that.
Get rid of the ones that are-
Everybody else feels about that. I don't think that you're gonna have 10 of them crashing into town.
At 5,000 a pop.
No.
But,
And we don't even know if that might even be regulated too.
right.
You know, if it's regulated that you have to have it, they might already have, who knows?
You wouldn't get a lot of crowds, yeah.
No.
It's not like, I don't think it's gonna be when like cannabis opened up, there was lines outside.
So is somebody ready to
I was looking for that, I couldn't find it.
read the motion?
Yeah, but we have to amend the
The page
1,000-foot thing.
13, yeah, you have to.
I went,
Do an addendum on that at the top there.
based on the testimony received, the staff report and the evidence and arguments before the planning commission at the public hearing on November 13th, 2024, the planning commission finds that application file ZOA-120-1 complies with the criteria identified in TMC 19.20.070 A through D and recommends approval of the proposal by the city council. The planning commission also requests that the city staff look into the 1,000-foot restriction and amend that if possible and include the part that is also for the marijuana on the 1,000-foot Is that my understanding?
To clarify, we'd have to do the marijuana separate.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
then you can get back to us at that at a separate time then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Since we only noticed for the psilocybin.
Is that clear enough as to what you, okay,
And for the record, that's TMC 1764-050B5F, that subsection.
thank you.
Yeah.
And so we hereby adopt the staff report standings allowing for the correction of typographical and grammatical errors and the addition of above 1,000-foot requirement.
Okay, is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Alright.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay,
Same timeline as the last application, where we'll go to council on the 4th of December.
okay. Sounds good. Okay, it looks like the next thing on the agenda is discussion items, updates and reports.
Staff doesn't have anything. We'll probably get back, I guess, we'll get back to the housing code updates in December for a meeting. But that's will probably be our primary focus. We shouldn't have any hearings that I know of. So
Can I ask a question? I know I missed last month and I was reading the city newsletter talking about I think you got a grant for the parks. Is that what I read in there?
yeah,
And then
sorry.
there's gonna be some assessment on parks and what needs to be done.
No, thank you. That's a good point and question. The city did receive a grant from Oregon Parks and Rec to do a planning grant for parks, and that's likely that'll mostly be happening in 2025. But the purpose and goal of that is you have a parks plan and you're able to evaluate all the parks that you have in the city, and it'll give often like baseline information of this park. And it'll include also not just city parks, but it'll include like the Ports Waterfront Park as well, but it'll give basic information of park size, park amenities, and then also usually park possible improvements. So like, yeah, Arcadia Park, it might list kind of what's there, what improvements need to be done. And then there's public involvement process to it, so doing outreach. Hopefully the timing of that would work, so we're doing some of that outreach in the summer. But then getting input from the public on what could be improved on different parks. And mapping inventory. Let me think about, and then also funding. It won't establish the funding, but it'll establish like funding options. So it'll give you the city council different ideas that could be implemented. They don't have to be, but it's like, here's some options to how you could potentially fund park improvements moving forward. That's really high level, probably missed something in there, but that's kind of what we would be doing with the parks plan.
It would be nice for the neighborhood parks if you could talk to somebody that's within the vicinity of a house and let us know how many times that park is used.
Yeah,
I mean, I always love it when I drive by Arcadia and there's kids playing in the
Yeah.
park.
Yeah.
You know, and there's just a whole bunch of really neat little parks, neighborhood parks. And it would be nice to know,
Mhm.
are they used once a day, once a week, the weekends?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I know.
Because they're,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you know, yeah, depending on how many, that would be curious.
I got some input on Arcadia Park. I take my grandkids down there quite a bit. And I noticed like the tire swing one,
It's not clear
the
to me.
beams
so-
on that are completely rotten.
okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they spent the time painting it. The tire swing one's completely rotten. The beams are completely rotten. I don't know why they were repainted. They have been replaced. And they never were power washed this year. None of the the play equipment was never power washed this year at Arcadia Park. We're talking about the one down Rum Bottom, right?
Right.
Okay. And the bathrooms, you know, I brought that up here a while back. They were all finished and stuff, but I have yet to find them unlocked. They were said, oh yeah, they're unlocked. No, absolutely not. Unless they're only unlocked for somebody special that has a key. I have never, not once, and I have even actually driven by and pulled over and checked. And I make it a special stop every time I drive by them now to see if they're unlocked, and I'm not yet once found them unlocked.
They're done.
Oh, they're done,
Right?
yeah, I was told
I mean, I
at our
assume they were
meeting
done.
prior that they're unlocked and ready to be used, and I have not yet, not once found them unlocked.
The bathrooms at the new bathrooms.
So I don't know who they're reserved for, but they're not for our public.
So,
I see people.
I don't know when they should be unlocked, but what I can do is I'll reach out to
I don't know who they're for, but they're not for our children.
yeah, I'll report, so I'll ask,
Maybe it's for the city to stop in and take a leak or something, but it's not for our kids or nobody.
I mean, I believe when those were built, the intent was that they're for public use. So what I can do is I'll reach out to Public Works and then report back.
I suggest everybody in this room stop by, rattle the door. See if you can take a leak. Impossible. It will not happen. Until. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see closing like at night or something when the kids are not nearly down there, but.
No, that's good.
And there's green slime growing on all that stuff, and it's never power washed this whole year.
So I'll ask Public Works about the power washing and the bathrooms.
I will pay and I will replace the tire swing. I will rebuild it myself for my own money. I have no problem with that. I will donate the material and repaint it and all that. It needs to be redone.
Yeah, and
I don't know if it's the same material as when, like, me and Tracy were kids, I don't know. But it's, I mean, I remember spinning around on it, but.
Is it made out of old railroad ties?
Actually, it doesn't look like it's made of any kind of treated wood.
That's a
But,
joke.
yeah, right.
Mhm.
But you know, it's probably from C.D. Johnson. But,
Well, that would
everything,
be
everything
old.
here is from C.D. Johnson. But, you know, but no, I like, why did they even bother painting it?
Is it Public Works or the part that is,
I can't believe
that
they
does
take a brush
the,
to it.
who oversees maintenance? Isn't it Public Works?
it's Public Works.
Yeah.
I think these are helpful comments because we can, and as part of the, especially as part of the process to update the plan, I think what the part of the goal is that you get a better idea of the across the board condition of the park so that you can figure out where to focus your time, because I
It's
think
embarrassing. You should take a look and go down there and see what they painted over. I mean, it's like trying to paint an anthill.
and I'll no,
It's not even funny to look and see what they painted.
Well, and doing an analysis on all the parks might be helpful for Public Works to know what, I mean, on an annual basis, we need to make sure we power wash, we need to make sure, you know, you kind of go along and they know that each park kind of needs whatever they need on an annual basis.
yeah.
That would probably be helpful to them.
And I think that's part of the hope is that they can get a
We could all
better,
have a work party and go down there with rags and a squirt bottle. If it's that important.
Did you want to talk, Tracy?
Oh, yes, I just thought I'd add a little comment, from where I'm sitting, perspective, it's good to hear all this stuff done, because I don't have kids that young that go down there. And we get updates, oh, this has been done, that's been done, but quite honestly, we have had, you know, a turnover, we have. Our public works director has not been there the whole year, and they've been focusing on some infrastructure projects instead of maybe focusing on the other things we're used to them focusing on, so when there's an area that they haven't taken care of properly, it's good for us to all hear that.
Don't we have some long-term staff? I mean, that, you know, I would think they'd like to have the pride for,
You think,
You know, I mean, they're union workers and stuff. You would think that, I mean,
There's been instructions,
yeah, I mean,
so. But I'm sure, I know Justin will be bringing that,
and
I'm
a
sure, to Public Works, and I will bring it up at the next week.
bunch of reprimands or something. I don't know what it'd take. I mean, I suggest go down and look at that painted tire swing. Even if I take your cell phone and look at that with your flashlight, you'd be like, that thing should be condemned right now until it's fixed.
Mhm.
I mean, I have no problem this weekend going and repairing it, doing it.
Well, and that's a danger, that's a risk for the city,
To even,
I mean,
think
if
about
it
painting,
were
you know
to-
it's such a liability and you paint it.
have
Like that.
somebody get hurt on that, yeah.
I'm sure they didn't have the top guy painting it, so
Yeah.
whoever painted it probably didn't know what they were.
They're doing what they were told.
Yeah, it's like, don't push too hard or your paintbrush is gonna go clean through it. You know, I mean, chunks falling off on your paintbrush.
Well, I was kind of excited when I saw that in the newsletter, I thought, oh, I think the parks are
Yes.
important, so
Same here.
I
And I'd
liked
love to
the,
see more
you know,
grant money
the
and stuff.
idea of that.
That's
Did
great.
the-
I like that.
The group of high school kids, we had a group of high school kids that came and spoke to us at council. And they kind of went around to the different parks in town, these kids did. And they pointed out stuff that they would like to see, stuff that they didn't, you know, they gave us a lot of different ideas and. At least for a few of the parks, and we encouraged them to certainly come back and, you know, give us some more ideas, and then. Was that when this grant was applied for, is after that, or had that already been applied for?
When was that? They came.
It was before my surgery, so it was probably May.
Okay, it's probably about the same time because the grant was due around May. It was something that the city manager had asked us to apply for the planning grant. So I think timing wise, it might have right around the same time, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that was in the discussion items, any staff comments that we haven't already made?
That's everything.
Any commissioner comments?
I have one.
Okay,
Okay, so this is on the 1,000-foot marijuana thing.
Okay.
So I noticed just tonight, actually, that we're looking here on you have the list of visual stuff, right? So you have the marijuana retailer. But then down here on the light industrial, it says medical marijuana dispensary facility, but there's nothing for manufacturing marijuana stuff. Either one of those.
Said on the original. I thought I had seen that, because I read. See,
So that's just the conditional use.
Yeah, I mean that,
if you look, I think if you look under the definition, I think it's in there. They're not allowed to grow it outside. They're allowed to grow it, but they're not allowed to grow it outside. The marijuana, that's what I remember. Yeah. It all has to be inside.
I can't remember. I wasn't here for when those standards got adopted. Do you remember any history, Arlene? Put you on the spot.
Possibly, I think,
Yeah, these were all from the medical marijuana retailer. That's what was all adopted in, what was that, 2018, 19, around
yeah,
There.
17 probably.
17. But those, I believe we were adopting following what we had to, for the most part, for state law in terms of standards, but yeah, I only.
Marijuana, under E, it's prohibited.
What's the?
That's home occupation.
That's the
On
general residential.
home occupation,
General.
but I know I saw something about. Not being able to have it outside, grow it outside, it all had to be contained in.
Oh, here, I found
Did
it.
you find it?
It is. Little.
So the Green Dragon, what do they do there?
Hmm?
They're just dispensing down here.
Yeah, but sometimes they would have little plants in there too. But it was inside. Because that's what caught my eye. It's like, wait a minute.
They make stuff like gummies and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
I think, yeah,
The-
my neighbor's a gummy person.
to answer your question, I think I found we don't have the industrial zone standards listed here for we have the light industrial, not the industrial.
Oh, okay.
But the industrial zone, that's where, and as a conditional use, that's where producer, processor, wholesaler, or lab is. So that's,
With only inside though. Is that where it says that not outside?
yeah, that would still be only inside, but only in so we have a light industrial zone, then the industrial zone. The industrial zone, which is typically heavier than the light industrial zone, has the marijuana producer, processor, wholesaler, or lab, and that's where you would be, I think, doing more of the heavy processing.
Okay.
So that's where it was, when it was adopted, but was the industrial zone.
Yeah, I found it right here. It's the. Never mind.
That's a
That's my question.
good question.
Yeah, that's your own question.
All right, I got that.
Yes, does anybody else have any other comments? Okay, okay.
I didn't mean to be late. My mail didn't come till 9 o'clock last night. It didn't come only once last week.
I tell you, you cannot count on that anymore.
Well, we got the same one, well, it runs a wall, the same as out on Sand Street.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
know what's happening to the post office.
Yeah.
It got here at 4 o'clock.
Mine come at 9 o'clock last night. That's when the dogs started raising pain but I didn't get back home till about 4:30 today and that's when my mail was sitting there for me and, well, I just ate dinner and
Is there something
started
happening
going
with
through
the
my
post?
mail and I just got
Excuse me?
back.
Something happening with the post office?
I don't know.
Yeah,
We
it happened,
we
it
haven't-
happened a couple years ago.
We haven't been.
Yeah, you're right. It happened a couple years
A
ago.
little while.
And then it's still catching up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.
Do it.
Are you guys good with that?
They have